Welcome back, my true crime family. This is Coffee and Crime with Crystal Nichole, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are not a subscriber and want to be, click that subscribe button so you can be notified when I come out with a new episode. The story I want to talk to you about today is about a teenage boy who raged inside, and nothing or no one could help him. Let's get started and make sure you grab some coffee because we're going to talk some crime. In the early morning hours of Sunday, July 17th, 2011, at around 4:24 a.m., the Port St. Lucie Police Department received a tip from a teenager named Michael Mandel. He stated he had left a house party hosted by his best friend, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley. And in that call, Michael told police that Tyler had confessed to killing his parents and even showed him the bodies. The police arrived at the Hadley residence located at 371 Northeast Granger Avenue in Port St. Lucie, Florida, at 4:40 a.m. to perform a routine welfare check. They knocked on the door and Tyler answered. He appeared to be extremely nervous, frantic, and erratic. The party had been long over, but the home remained in complete disarray. So quickly securing a search warrant, they entered the Hadley home. It was littered with empty beer bottles, liquor bottles, and party debris strewn across the kitchen, living areas, and bathrooms. But one thing the investigators noted was the strong odor of bleach and cleaning chemicals. But it didn't mask the smell of decomposition. They found blood splatter on the walls and ceilings. There was bloody sheets, towels, and household items had been piled up throughout the living spaces where Tyler tried to apparently wipe down the floors. Since the main focus from the phone call from Michael had been the presumed bodies in the master bedroom, they made their way to the locked bedroom door. Finally opening the door, they discovered two partially buried and covered bodies under a massive pile of household items, including blood-soaked towels, linens, files, books, furniture, magazines, and so much more. It was as if everything in that house was piled on top of these bodies. I can't imagine finding something this disturbing. And sticking out from the pile of debris between the two bodies was the murder weapon, a 17-inch bloody framing claw hammer. Now, what is a framing claw hammer? It's a heavy-duty, oversized claw hammer specifically designed for rough carpentry, house framing, and heavy-duty construction. It features a long handle for heavy striking power and a textured waffle pattern face to prevent slipping. This grips the nail head tightly to prevent the hammer from slipping when driving large nails quickly. Unlike the curved claw of a standard household hammer, the framing hammer has a straight, wedge-shaped claw. This is designed for prying apart lumber and heavy-duty demolition. The long handle acts as a lever, allowing the user to swing harder and faster to drive large spikes into dimensional lumber. The hammer weighs 20 to 32 ounces. Tyler's erratic behavior and the discovery of the two bodies resulted in the police immediately detaining Tyler at the scene. He was taken into custody for the murders of his mother, Mary Jo Hadley, and his father, Blake Hadley. We asked the question, why? Why did a 17-year-old boy kill his parents? And why in such a brutal way? Let's go back to Tyler's earlier years. Blake and Mary Jo Hadley met in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and began building their life together. They married around 1986, and in 1987 would move to Port St. Lucie to a home they bought and would later die in. The couple wanted to be near Blake's parents, who had recently retired in the neighboring town of Stuart, Florida. At the time of their murders, they had been married for 25 years. During their marriage, Mary Jo would have their first son, Ryan, and 6 years later, they welcomed another son, Tyler, who was born on December 16th, 1993. It seemed like an idyllic family. But at a very young age, around 10, Tyler began to exhibit signs that everything wasn't quite right. He began showing signs of serious childhood depression, which led to him being prescribed antidepressants, specifically Prozac and later Lexapro, to treat his early onset depressive disorders. As Tyler grew and entered high school, his mental health issues only heightened. They merged with severe substance abuse and behavioral problems. At around the age of 15, he became heavily addicted to marijuana and alcohol. Then he would turn to ecstasy, cocaine, and he would abuse over-the-counter cough syrup. He was trying to escape his mental state. Not only were drugs and alcohol his preference, but he would sneak out of the house. He would lie and steal. Blake and Mary Jo were beside themselves, trying everything to help their son. Tyler would lose weight drastically and openly express a desire to die. His parents would enroll him in 2 different outpatient mental health and substance abuse programs in a desperate attempt to save their son, but nothing worked. And in the months leading up to his crime, Tyler began commenting and making dark jokes to his friends about killing his parents. He once told a friend, "If you kill my mom, I'll give you my Lincoln." But because Tyler was known as a quiet, nonviolent teenager, his friends just brushed it off as him just being edgy or dark. I always say, be very careful with those quiet people who show no aggression or anger. They're holding it in, and someday they will explode into a rage. 2 weeks before the murders, on July 2nd, after Mary Jo took away Tyler's cell phone, he sent a Facebook message to a friend saying, quote, "LOL, yep, she's a C-word. For show, I might kill her." I have to say this, that Mary Jo only spoke of her fears that Tyler might harm himself, and she spoke of these fears to her friends and family. She was never afraid that Tyler was going to kill her, and his father, Blake, never said he was fearful of his son. In fact, just before his death, Blake had been informed by his employer that he was getting a raise and was no longer going to be working nights. He was going to have a regular 9-to-5 job, and he was so excited. Blake told his brother Michael Hadley that he was now able to spend more time with Tai Tai, which was Tyler's nickname. Blake Hadley was a stable provider and worked for 30 years as a plant operator at the Florida Power and Light Company nuclear facility in St. Lucie County. Neighbors and family described him as a hardworking, good-hearted man, and that he was heavily involved in his 2 sons' lives. Blake would host backyard barbecues and played basketball with his son Tyler every chance he could get. As Blake grew up, he was always considered the clown of the family, and when he was younger, as most brothers do, he was picked on, until he grew into a 6'4" man. Then things changed, and the siblings started listening to him. Mary Jo Hadley was a beloved and dedicated first-grade teacher. She taught at Village Green Environmental Studies School in St. Lucie County, and her former students and colleagues remembered her for her great sense of humor and her relentless devotion to her students. I've seen some cases of teachers being murdered by their children, and I often wonder, these teachers help so many children, but they couldn't help their own children. It takes a special kind of person to want to be a teacher. Mary Jo's friends and family described her as a good-hearted person who desperately tried to help her son. So you have a family that seemed normal, but in the middle was a then 17-year-old boy with thoughts of rage and murder, and his parents were unaware that they would soon be killed by the son they so adored. We start on the day of July 16th, 2011. It's a Saturday, and Tyler sat in his home in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and posted on his Facebook page, quote, "Party at my crib tonight, .. maybe." He then would edit that post and write, quote, "Party at my house, HMU," which stands for Hit Me Up. It was around noon when he made that post and would include his father's cell phone number for people to call for information about the party. And a few hours later, he would kill his parents. Shortly after 5 p.m., Tyler took 3 ecstasy pills and made his way to where his mother, 47-year-old Mary Jo Hadley, was sitting working on the computer in the family room. He stood behind her for what seemed like minutes and, with a framing claw hammer, struck the first blow to the back of her head. She asked him why, but Tyler doesn't give his mom an answer to her question. He just keeps swinging the hammer onto her as she continues to scream. 54-year-old Blake Hadley heard the commotion and ran out of the master bedroom into the family room. For a few seconds, Blake and his son have a stare down. Then Tyler quickly lunges at his father. Blake asked his son, "Why are you doing this?" And Tyler responds, "Why not? Why the F not?" And he continued to swing the hammer down on his father. Blake and Mary Jo put up a fight, but Tyler and all his rage were no match. Later, forensics suggested that his parents were alive through most of the attack. The bodies were examined, and the results were that Blake received at least 65 blunt trauma injuries, soft tissue bruising, massive skull fractures, and multiple broken bones in his arms and legs. Mary Jo sustained a large gaping wound on the back of her head, along with broken ribs, a lacerated lung, and defensive injuries indicating a struggle. She was struck 36 times. Tyler later said in an interview with Court TV that he was in a blind rage. He says, "I was covered in blood. I was detached. I went into this sort of psychotic state, into a trance. I had some sense of finality that it was over. All that compulsive thinking was just gone." You see, Tyler had thoughts, dark and murderous thoughts that plagued his every waking moment, thoughts of killing his parents. And he said that if he killed his parents, those thoughts would go away. And that's what he wanted the most, just to get them out of his head. After the barbaric attack, Tyler dragged the lifeless bodies of his parents into their master bedroom. He would spend 2 to 3 hours trying to clean up all of the blood. He had a party to host. And you may be wondering if Tyler just killed his parents in the heat of the moment. Of course he didn't. He planned to kill his parents, and on that day he woke up and said this was the day. As Tyler was cleaning the house, he would begin to take numerous items throughout the home and throw them on top of his parents' bodies. Furniture, magazines, papers, organizers, decorations, blankets, wrapping paper, dishes, and so much more until Blake and Mary Jo's bodies are good and hidden. He then closes the door. And during this time comes a slight feeling of shame at what he had just done, just a small amount. And with that shame came a petrified dread in the pit of his stomach of what lurked beyond that closed bedroom door, the dread of what he had just done. But he moved on with his party plans, driving his parents' car to the ATM and pulling out their money to go and buy alcohol and party supplies for his rager. This was confirmed by the ATM records investigators obtained. He was seen on the security cameras at the ATM. So Tyler was arrested, and now we go into what happened at his trial. Oh, but wait. Tyler didn't go to trial. At first, he pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Then he pled no contest. A no contest plea means you do not have to admit guilt, but accept the conviction and punishment. The core of it is you do not confess to the crime. You are simply stating that you will not fight the charges. And it's an immediate conviction. You are sentenced and treated as guilty by the judge. The most important reason why defendants choose this option is to prevent the plea from being used as an admission of fault in subsequent civil lawsuits. The no contest plea is usually used in plea bargains to resolve a case quickly. Now, what I learned researching this was that you cannot simply choose this plea. You must ask the judge for permission, and they have the discretion to deny it. Also, some states restrict this plea or only allow it for minor offenses. So in February of 2014, Tyler changed his plea to no contest for the beating deaths of his parents in 2011, and he would be sentenced by the judge to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But in 2018, Tyler was resentenced. And why did this happen? Well, on April 27th, 2016, the 4th District Court of Appeal in Florida overturned Tyler's mandatory life sentence. They ruled that his original sentence was unconstitutional because he was only 17 years old at the time of the murders. Give me a break. Unconstitutional? Why don't you tell that to Blake and Mary Jo or their friends and family? Unconstitutional. This ruling required that Tyler receive a new sentencing hearing, where the judge had to consider potential alternatives to life without parole. Now let's talk about why this was done. The appellate court cited the U.S. Supreme Court case Miller versus Alabama. This case, which took place in 2012, was ruled by the Supreme Court that mandatory life sentences without the possibility of parole for juvenile homicide offenders are unconstitutional. There's that word again, unconstitutional. It cites that these sentences violate the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. The Supreme Court determined that judges and juries must have the ability to consider mitigating facts, such as the offender's age, immaturity, and family and home environment, before imposing the harshest possible penalties on minors. It also states that juveniles possess diminished culpability, are more impulsive, and have a greater capacity for rehabilitation. Well, some juveniles do have the capacity to be rehabilitated. Some of them don't. The Miller versus Alabama case comes from 14-year-olds Evan Miller from Alabama and Contrell Jackson from Arkansas, who were convicted of murder and received mandatory life sentences without parole. I'll probably cover this crime as well, but in short, these two attacked their neighbor, beat him with a baseball bat, and set his mobile home on fire, resulting in the victim's death. Evan Miller was tried as an adult and convicted. Under Alabama law, the conviction carried a mandatory minimum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, giving the judge no discretion to consider Evan's age or background. The ruling in the Miller versus Alabama case invalidated mandatory juvenile life without parole statutes in 29 states. It requires states to offer individualized sentencing hearings rather than applying automatic, one-size-fits-all punishments for minors. And Tyler was sentenced during a period of time where it was uncertain how to appropriately sentence a juvenile. It was also discovered that in his first trial, the court considered that Tyler had a capital felony in his criminal history, which he did not. But what about the victims? Yes, juveniles aren't fully developed and can be sporadic and do things without thinking. But Tyler had these thoughts of killing his parents for a long time, and Blake and Mary Jo were trying as hard as they could to get their son the help he needed. But some teenagers like Tyler are just plain evil. But I will say I do understand that it can be hard to separate the ones who can be helped and the ones who can't. So Tyler's resentencing hearing begins and lasted 6 days. Prosecutor Tom Backdahl opened with this: the killing of Blake and Mary Jo Hadley was a cold, calculated, premeditated act. And Tyler's defense attorney didn't offer any opening statements, which was interesting to find out. The first witness the prosecution called to the stand was Tyler's older brother, Ryan Hadley. He was on the stand for nearly an hour and spoke about the closeness the two brothers had while growing up. But as Tyler grew older, Ryan stated, he began stealing his parents' debit card and his father's truck keys without permission. Ryan is asked what sentence he wants Tyler to receive. And Ryan responds, quote, "I guess what I want is for him to get the maximum penalty possible, which I understand is life in prison without parole." Ryan also spoke outside of the courtroom, saying he still loves his brother and visits him in prison. He stated, "I still love him, and I don't think loving somebody means that they shouldn't be punished for the things that they do." And in a later interview, he said, "I still think about Tyler every day as my brother and not as the person who killed my parents." Ryan Hadley filed a primary civil lawsuit involving his younger brother soon after the murders. He was represented by his attorney, Stephen Navarrete. They asked the court to block Tyler from any chance of inheriting any of their parents' money. They cited the Florida statute section 732802, also known as the Slayer statute. The lawsuit sought a formal court declaration to prohibit Tyler from receiving any inheritance or benefits from Blake and Mary Jo's estate. The statute reads, "A person who intentionally and unlawfully kills another person is not entitled to reap benefits of the unlawful and intentional deaths, and by virtue of that statute is deemed to have been disqualified from receiving the life insurance policy benefit payments, pension plan benefit payments, or any other entitlement that otherwise would vest by virtues of the deaths of Blake M. Hadley and Mary Jo Hadley." Ryan said he was concerned about the payout from his parents' 401k plan because the federal EDSA law may preempt the Florida statute. The EDSA law, which stands for Employee Retirement Income Security Act, is a federal law that establishes minimum standards for most voluntary established retirement and health plans in private industry. It covers retirement plans, for example, 401ks and pensions, health insurance and medical benefit plans, and disability and life insurance plans. Now, if, as in this case, the person or persons are killed by one of the benefactors, there can be a legal hurdle to stop that person from getting the benefits. Because the EDSA law strictly mandates that plan administrators follow the exact terms of the plan and typically overrides state laws. So what you must do is file a civil lawsuit in court, and the plan administrators will file an interpleader action in federal court. An interpleader action is a legal procedure that allows a neutral third party holding money or property to deposit the assets with the court and require competing plaintiffs to litigate the dispute among themselves. This forces all competing family members and plaintiffs to let a judge decide exactly who is entitled to the funds. In simple terms, by applying the statute, the civil law treated Tyler as if he had predeceased his parents, ensuring that 100% of the estate and insurance payouts went to Ryan rather than funding Tyler's criminal defense or prison accounts. Ryan won his civil case and received all of his parents' inheritance. He would later go on to co-write a book with Dan Urich, a licensed clinical medical health counselor, who has worked extensively with those who have experienced traumatic grief. The book is titled "1,000 Fireflies: Living in the Aftermath of My Parents' Murders." Tyler's niece was called next, and she testified that he looked fine at a family dinner the night before the murders. Another key witness was a now handcuffed blue jumpsuit wearing Michael Mandel. He recalled the times when Tyler spoke of killing his parents and the evening of the party. He stated he felt guilty for not doing more and would occasionally glare at Tyler from the witness stand. What was going on with Michael? Well, Michael grew up committing crimes himself. He first faced felony charges after being caught selling a gun that had been reported stolen. Then in September of 2018, he was arrested and held without bond at the county jail for violating the terms of his active probation. He was also arrested for drug-related charges, which ultimately contributed to his probation violations. And as my grandparents would say, will these kids ever learn? I want to talk more about Michael. So we go back to the night of Tyler's party. What baffles me is that Michael and Tyler were together most of that night. And in a conversation, Tyler confesses to killing his parents. It's important to note Tyler and Michael have been friends since they were 8 years old. So Michael thinks he knows his friend inside and out. And with this so called confession, Michael probably thinks it's just Tyler being Tyler. So Tyler walks Michael to his parents' bedroom door and opens it. Michael sees the debris and destruction in the room. Then he sees the blood. He then goes outside into the back of the house where Blake and Mary Jo's bedroom window is and shines his cell phone flashlight inside the room. And that's when he sees parts of their bodies. Let me ask you, what would you have done? I would have booked it right out of there, dialing 911 as I ran. That's what Michael did, right? Nope. Claiming to be in shock, he goes back inside and continues to hang out with Tyler, and he would later take a selfie with him. He was asked why he took the selfie with his best friend, and Michael said this, "Because I knew it was going to be the last time I would ever see him." And Michael takes it a step further and says, "Still to this day, I'll never see Tyler as a murderer. He's my longtime childhood friend, and that's all I'm ever gonna see him as for the rest of my life." Wow. Michael needs to seek treatment if he hasn't already. There's something that happened within him after he saw the bodies of Mary Jo and Blake. He needs to own up to the fact that he should have reacted better the night of the party. He should have left that party and gone straight to the police. But he stayed with his friend reportedly for 4 hours before he left and called the local hotline to report the murders. 4 hours. I guess I have never had a friend I cared so much about that when they tell me they killed someone and showed me the body, that I would just go on about my business with them for hours, then call the police. But that's just me. So while all this is going on, the party is in full swing. Beer and liquor are flowing, everyone's having a good time with no adult supervision. It's great. And it's a pretty decent turnout. About 60 teenagers are in and outside of the house. But there was something odd in the middle of this good time. Some partygoers noticed a strange and nasty odor in the home, and some saw spots of blood. But no way, it must have been spilled drinks, right? A large crowd gathered around a makeshift beer pong table that sat next to the family computer, and the kids would take turns playing songs on YouTube. But the computer was filthy. The once white keyboard was tacky with a brownish liquid. Probably beer or Coke had spilled on it. The teens did wonder when Tyler's party invitation had gone out on Facebook. He had never had a party, never been allowed to have one. His parents would have never given their permission. After all, Tyler was in trouble so much. According to most teenagers, Blake and Mary Jo were strict, but they were now in the Hadley home, so his parents must have allowed the party. Various teens asked Tyler about his parents, and he would offer up, "Oh, they're in Florida," or he would say, "This is my house now." A highly intoxicated teen, unaware of the murders, made an eerie joke by telling others, "I smell dead people." And someone in the crowd yelled out, "He killed his parents," which got a laugh from the crowd. I can't even imagine. Now, there had been 2 911 calls, one from a teenage girl and the other from a teenage boy, that reported they were at the party and the host, Tyler Hadley, was bragging about killing his parents. The boy stated that Tyler told him he had committed the murders, but he had called Crime Stoppers to report it, and the boy just wanted to call the police to make sure that they knew. But how long did these teenagers wait to call the police? Did they enjoy the party, then call? Probably. Even if they thought it was a joke, in their minds, wouldn't they wonder where his parents were, since they never allowed him to host parties? Wouldn't that raise a red flag for the teens? Or were they just happy to be drinking with no adults around? Definitely. I've got to insert a little bit about myself. I have been intrigued with horror and true crime ever since junior high. So if I were at this party, I would know something was terribly wrong with the way the house was, the odors, Tyler's admission. Even as a teenager, my senses would have been on high alert. I definitely would have done something. So now we go back to Tyler's resentencing hearing. After Michael Mendel's testimony, the two doctors from the medical examiner's office testified about the autopsies, walking the court through the diagrams and brutal defensive wounds suffered by Blake and Mary Jo. Tyler's uncle, Mike Hadley, took the stand to provide an emotional impact statement strongly opposing any reduction in Tyler's sentence. He would speak with the reporters afterwards, and he said this: "We have lost another member of our family. It is not a happy day. There is no happy outcome on these situations. One word I never want to hear again is the word parricide. Anybody with children, parents, all of you, please take a look at the way you're raising your children. There is a right and a wrong way to do that, and a little spank on the butt here and there is not a bad thing. It's good medicine, probably the best medicine God ever gave us. Do it right and you'll have good kids that will grow up and maybe protect you instead of killing you." He then said, "Blake and Mary Jo were probably the most sweetest, generous, loving people you'd ever have to meet, and I wish you all could have met them. You would agree with me 100%. I want to insert this also. 3 years after Tyler was sentenced, Mike gave an interview to a local news station. He stated just 3 days before the murders, Blake, Mary Jo, and Tyler were at Mike's cabin in the northern Georgia mountains. He said there was nothing out of the ordinary about the visit. There were times where Mike thought Tyler looked sad or was thinking about something, but he just chalked it up as just another 17-year-old, a teenager going through something. It just goes to show you, you never know what someone is truly thinking." Tyler's 87-year-old grandmother, Mary Jo's mother, Maggie, took the stand and wept for her grandson. She told the court about how Tyler was born premature, how at the age of 10 he was put on medication, and how he wanted so bad to have friends. She also said that she comforted him when he was feeling bad. I will tell you, a grandmother's love is something unexplainable, and you could feel the sorrow she had, not only for Tyler, but for her daughter and her daughter's husband. Carmela Johnson, a close friend of Mary Jo's, testified as well. She taught with Mary Jo at the Village Green School. She would then go on to teach in Mary Jo's classroom to feel closer to her friend. Carmela had known Tyler for many years and stated that he exhibited odd behavior and would constantly seek reassurance from others. He would repeatedly ask his mother, "Do you love me, Mom? Do you love me?" And if Mary Jo would compare Tyler to anyone else, he would ask her, "Do you love them better than me, Mom? And do you wish I was dead, Mom?" And during her cross-examination, Carmela testified that she had seen Mary Jo and Tyler at the mall a few days before the murders, and everything seemed fine. We know why family and friends from both sides are called to the stand, to make the person who's on trial and the victims look more human, so others can understand them better. This approach, of course, can go either way. There were two mental health experts called to the stand by the defense team. One was a Dr. Robert King Sheriff. He's an adolescent psychologist who testified about Tyler's deep-seated childhood mental health struggles, severe internal dialogue, and feelings of worthlessness. The other expert, Dr. Gene Barrison, is a defense psychiatrist who reviewed Tyler's case and stated that Tyler never showed a history of violent behavior before the murders. He also stated that Tyler had become reflective, that he was able to own up to, look back, and talk about his behavior of the murders. Dr. Barrison said Tyler was a strong candidate for rehabilitation. This in turn made the prosecuting attorney, Tom Backdahl, heavily cross-examine the expert, causing him to continuously raise his voice and ask if he could determine if Tyler were to get out and become angry again, would he murder again? And of course, no one can determine that. And of course, I enjoyed how aggressively the attorney went after the doctor. On the final day of the hearing, Tyler Hadley spoke for the first time. With his voice deep and disturbing, he looked at the judge, then turned around towards the courtroom attendees. which included his family. This is some of what he said. "I'd like to direct this to my entire family. All of them. Everyone. All of them. I can't apologize or make amends for the horrible acts I've done. Not a single day goes by that I do not think about my parents or my whole family that I affected by this." He stated he realized he took away a son, father, a mother, a sister, a brother, and 2 friends. He later said, "I don't expect forgiveness, and I know that they will not forgive me, and I'm not expecting forgiveness. I'm sorry to my brother, my grandparents, the rest of my family, and my parents' friends. I'm sorry that I took them away from you." The judge thankfully upheld Tyler's sentence of life in prison. I want to share some things that Tyler did while he was in jail before he was sentenced. Tyler wrote multiple letters to family and friends. One letter to Michael Mandel read, "I'd be crushed if I got a life sentence. That's the thing that haunts me every day and wakes me up in a cold sweat most nights." Another letter addressed to Michael reads, "I'm not a cold-blooded monster like everyone thinks I am. I'm a caring person that made a horrible mistake." Then another letter to his grandparents that read, "I'm doing okay, but I'm still really depressed, hoping to talk to mental health tomorrow and ask them about my medicine. And I've been praying every day and writing letters to God, hoping it helps me get a decent plea deal." You see, Tyler claimed to have been seeing a priest while in jail, and that he wanted to become a priest, stating it was sad that it took him going to jail to find God. But he then turns around and says something about a certain pill and that he talks with the devil. Tyler was worried how his friends would view him, writing, "I hope all of you don't think of me as some psychopath. I'm not. Far from it. I'm still the same person. I just made a life-threatening mistake." I really do wonder why inmates are allowed to write and receive letters. What's that saying? If you do the crime, you do the time. So if you do the crime, you should be doing the time. That should be one of your punishments, not to have contact with the outside world. But then again, that's my opinion. Tyler also received letters, and in one postcard from relatives, it featured a picture of Mary Jo and read, "It's October 4th, 2011. Do you know what today would have been? Your mom's 48th birthday. It is a very sad day for us. We will never be able to wish her a happy birthday again." And at the bottom of the postcard, it read, "If you're going through hell, keep going." That makes me smile. Just a little. Oh, and another thing. While in jail awaiting his sentencing, Tyler spent his time signing autographs for fellow inmates. And he would take a news article about the murders and write, "It's hammer time," across the article and sign it with his self-proclaimed nickname, Hammer Boy. Among the nickname Hammer Boy, he wanted to be called Hammer, Hambo, or Bam Bam. One of the inmates in prison told authorities he asked Tyler, "Why did you kill your parents?" And Tyler said it was the devil, because the devil is drugs and money. He also told the inmate that while he was killing his mother and father, he knew that they loved him. All that is so sick. One of the most important interviews I watched was with Court TV. It was an interview featured on their show, Interview with a Killer. At his home in the Liberty Correctional Institution, Tyler sits across from the journalist with faded tattoos on his arms and waits for questions. He continuously shifts his eyes as if there is someone in the corner of the room he doesn't want to see. But it's only him, the journalist, and the camera crew. Tyler explains that his childhood was ideal, but there was something wrong with Tyler. So he was taken to numerous doctors who noted him as feeling hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. Tyler felt this way ever since he could remember. And it wasn't because his parents put that in his mind or made him feel less than. It was just who he felt he was, a person who was not worthy. I want to stop right here for a moment. Most of us have felt this way when we were younger. And most of us find comfort in our parents or friends or other family members. Yes, some of us hide it away and try to deal with it ourselves, but most of us don't begin to think about killing our parents. Okay, back to the interview. So his parents did what they thought was right. They took him to doctors. 3 psychiatrists determined him to have the following: oppressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, social phobia, disruptive disorder, conduct disorder, bulimia, hypothyroidism, and acne. But whenever Tyler was being treated, he refused to speak to the doctors. So at the age of 9, he was given medication to help him. An array of medication that included Adderall, growth hormones, thyroid replacement therapies, and Zoloft. Those were just a few. Okay, I have to stop again. This may be a controversial topic, but I have never understood why medication is given to a child. There are factors that go into it, but to prescribe enough medication to start your own pharmacy is outrageous. Are we all just guinea pigs? Do they see us coming and think, how much money can we get out of them? The medical field is ludicrous. So when Tyler reaches high school, his parents were at their wits' end. They were desperate to help their son, but Tyler was desperate to rid himself of his dark thoughts. So with Tyler's increased destructive behavior, Blake and Mary Jo took him to 2 different mental health substance abuse programs in the spring before the murders. But Tyler resisted all the way and became angry at them for trying to help him. And he stated that they were close to putting him in an institution, which made him even more angry. He would have outbursts at home and be disruptive, and his parents would punish him by grounding him or taking things away that he enjoyed. The interviewer asked Tyler, did he gravitate towards the wrong crowd? With a smirk, he says, everybody says I went to the wrong crowd, but I think I was the wrong crowd. He was caught drinking, smoking, lying, and sneaking out. And his parents stated they couldn't trust him, and that he wouldn't tell them anything, and that they didn't know his friends. He was losing weight, and they had caught him throwing up, which he denied. And they said that Tyler told them he wanted to die. Tyler admitted that the teenage Tyler could have talked to his parents, but he felt like he couldn't. And when asked how he would describe his parents, he simply says, saints. He says they were always there for him, even when he was acting out. When the joke of killing his parents turned into an actual plan, Tyler was sitting at his friend's house. They were smoking weed and drinking beer when Tyler began to latch on to the thoughts of murder. And 2 days before the killings, Tyler spoke to one of his friends and told them his parents might be going out of town. Tyler was ready to do the unthinkable. On the evening of July 15th, the family goes out to dinner with Tyler's grandparents. And when they are ready to leave, Tyler tells his grandmother and grandfather that he loves them. And later that night, he stands over his parents as they are sleeping with a pair of garden shears. But he stopped himself that night. His parents would live for a little bit longer. I want to go over the day of July 16th again because this is coming from Tyler as he sits with the interviewer for that Court TV interview. Tyler wakes up around 9:30 or 10 in the morning, and he hadn't planned on this day to be the day. All he knew was those thoughts were still there, to kill his parents. And when the time came, Tyler would approach his mother from behind as she sat at the family's home computer. He felt like he stood there for 5 minutes, but he knew it was only about 20 seconds. He delivered the first blow to the back of her head with the framing claw hammer, and she asked him why. He claims he didn't know if she was facing him, but then he says she turned around and he began hitting her until she was down on the ground, where he proceeded to bludgeon her. Tyler remembers the blood everywhere and that he wasn't thinking. He was just finally acting out his thoughts. While he was carrying out these murders, Tyler said that he felt as if his mouth contracted into a huge, unearthly smile. A mechanical smile, he says. In my opinion, the smile of a demon. And when it was all over, Tyler went into his bathroom, and while covered in his parents' blood, he looked into the mirror and laughed. A deranged laughter had come out of this teenage boy right after he brutally killed the 2 people who loved him the most. So he had finally gotten rid of the thoughts that had plagued him for so long, but now there were other feelings. But Tyler suppressed everything and moved on. Now it was time for the party. He wanted one last blowout before he ends it. Yes, before he ends his own life. You see, killing his parents wasn't the end of his plan. He was going to kill himself by shutting himself in the garage and turning on his car. He wanted to die by carbon monoxide poisoning, an easier way to die than what he had done to his parents. He confirmed the party plans on Facebook, telling everyone his parents were out of town. And on a phone call with a friend, he was giving them directions to his house while he was still covered in blood. So with an unsupervised house party, teens from all over Port St. Lucie crowded into the home. And it did surprise Tyler that his best friend Michael was the one who reported him. He actually looked more hurt about his friend telling on him than his parents' murders. He's just plain sick. Tyler Hadley had committed parricide. Now, what is that? A parricide is a deliberate killing of one's own parent. It's an umbrella term that can be used to refer to acts of matricide, the deliberate killing of one's own mother, and patricide, the deliberate killing of one's own father. Parricide accounts for about 1% to 2% of all annual homicides, and studies show that only about 20% of offenders are under the age of 18. And in most cases of parricide, the motives are alleged abuse and self-defense to financial greed and severe psychological disturbance. Some of the most well-known murder cases include Lizzie Borden, the Menendez brothers, and Ronald DeFeo. And my question is, could this have been prevented? I really don't think so. Unless Blake and Mary Jo would have put Tyler in an inpatient program sooner, maybe Tyler would have been helped. But, of course, we'll never know. His parents had been asking the same question ever since he was a toddler. What's wrong with Tyler? And when he grew into a teenager, he became heavily involved in drugs and had committed crimes, such as arson, vandalism, theft, and aggravated battery, which he had been criminally detained for. He was also skipping school and taking drugs along with selling them. Then there was the $15,000 civil suit pending after Tyler had hit and injured a child while driving his father's car in June of 2010. He had been enrolled in 2 outpatient drug treatment programs, which proved to be unsuccessful since he was continuing to use drugs and fighting the program every step of the way. So his parents were desperate to get him help before he turned 18. And it was later revealed that they had found an inpatient treatment program for their son before he turned 18. And this was the reasoning for his plot to kill his parents. Well, maybe only part of the reason. Tyler was resentful and wanted to throw a house party. 5 months after the killing, Kathleen Heide, a USF criminology professor, was the first to evaluate Tyler. She was the country's leading expert on parricide, the murder of parents by their children. She was hired by Tyler's defense team to try and make sense of his shocking crimes, and she's seen Tyler on 6 occasions over the course of about 2.5 years. She was interviewed for the court TV show Interview with the Killer. Dr. Heide claimed that Tyler was very immature for his age, acting like a child that looks to, quote, big people to have his needs met. It's okay when you're a child aged around 10, but no good when you're 17. She stated that from the outside world, parents look at this case and wonder if their child could do what Tyler did. But she claims that what happened in this case is rare. Dr. Heide says that Tyler has catathymic crisis, which is a psychological concept describing a sudden, explosive outburst of violent or disruptive behavior, triggered by unresolved emotional conflict and unconscious motivation. It aims to explain seemingly senseless, uncharacteristic acts of violence committed by individuals without prior histories of aggression. So let's break this down. According to Google, it's a 3 to 5 step process coined by psychiatrist Dr. Friedrich Wertham in 1937. The first 3 steps are: number 1, incubation, a period of thinking disorder where internal, often unconscious emotional conflict creates overwhelming psychological tension. Number 2, execution. The tension forces the person to commit a violent, seemingly motiveless act, often directed at a specific person or even oneself. And number three, catharsis or relief. Following the act, the perpetrator often experiences superficial calmness, disassociation, and a sudden disappearance of the anxiety or tension that plague them. And there are two forms of catathymic crisis: acute and chronic. Acute is triggered suddenly by an immediate, real, or perceived injury to the individual's self esteem or pride. The act functions as a sudden discharge of emotional buildup. And chronic catathymic crisis is preceded by a protracted period of internal agonizing, sometimes lasting months or even years, where a fixed idea of violence slowly takes root as the only, quote, solution to a person's problem. As Dr. Heidi stated, this is considered a rare condition and was the leading theory in Tyler's case. Then she goes on to also diagnose Tyler with conduct disorder. The core trait in this disorder is a repetitive and persistent pattern of behavior, where the basic rights of others or major age appropriate societal norms are violated. This age group is typically in children and teens. And behaviors may include aggression toward people and animals, destruction of property, deceitfulness, or theft, and serious rule violations. This disorder can process to antisocial personality disorder as well. Tyler was read the definition of catathymic crisis, and he was amazed at the actual definition. The interviewer asked if that sounds like it rings true, and Tyler says this: "That's what it sounds like. It kind of hits it on the head," and quietly he says, "No pun intended," then recovers and says, "That's what it sounds like." Tyler is a very disturbed person. Why would you even think to make that comment? We know that Tyler's defense team at first claimed he was insane at the time he committed the murders, but I didn't realize that the forensic doctors who interviewed Tyler stated he claimed to hear voices and apparitions. This is what's called malingering, the intentional fabrication or extreme exaggeration of physical or psychological symptoms in order to gain an external benefit. Tyler thought if he claimed these things, he could be proven insane and the court would go easy on him. He was still thinking of only himself and what he could get out of all of this. But Tyler was remorseful. Okay, I believe that. But a part of me thinks that Tyler did see and hear things that were only in his mind. He battled with his thoughts about his parents. From the court TV interview, Tyler says that he is treatable, but not worthy of the redemption of the opportunity. This is the only time when I see a flicker of humanity in him and his realization that what he did was horrific and unforgivable. The interview ends with Tyler being asked why did he kill his parents. Tyler pauses and says, "I don't know. I can't." Another pause, then, "I think it was to stop all of our pain." He says he takes full responsibility and wishes he could go back in time and not do all the harm he caused. Close to 1,000 people attended Blake and Mary Jo Hadley's memorial service, which was held at St. Lucie Catholic Church. During the service, all attendees were asked to pray for Tyler and to forgive him. Blake and Mary Jo are buried together at Forest Hills Memorial Park and Mausoleum in Palm City, Florida. Their memorial ID is number 735-417-21. The home where Blake, Mary Jo, and Tyler Hadley lived, located at 371 Northeast Grandeur Avenue in Port St. Lucie, Florida, is now gone. After the murders, the home stood abandoned and began to fall apart. A bank took over and repaired the home to try and sell it, but the memories remained in that home and that neighborhood. And in November of 2014, the U.S. Bank National Association acquired the property in a foreclosure-related transaction. They would demolish the Hadley home and donate the lot to the city of Port St. Lucie. And as of June 2024, there's a new home that sits on that lot. What's eerie is that in the state of Florida, realtors don't have to disclose what occurred in any home that is for sale. They must disclose any hidden structural defects, flood and damage risk, building code violations, and neighborhood issues. but they do not have to disclose if a previous occupant died in the home, or if a crime such as a murder or assault took place on the property, or if the home was previously occupied by someone with HIV or AIDS. That is crazy. Now, you can ask the seller or real estate agent directly if a murder has happened in a home for sale, and they must answer honestly. If they lie, they're at risk of several legal penalties for misrepresentation. You can also search for public records, police reports, or use online crime mapping tools to look for reported incidents. You can also talk to long-term residents or neighbors to ask about the property. So if you're looking at homes, buyers beware. Tyler hasn't been a model prisoner. According to state prison records and statements from prosecutors, his disciplinary history includes contraband, being caught with makeshift weapons, and smoking marijuana. Disciplinary confinement. He served 60 days in solitary confinement for infractions and an additional 30 days for 20 unauthorized absences from his teaching assistant job. Oh, did I forget to mention he completed his GED and received a teaching assistant certification? Yeah, he's a teacher, just like his mother was. He was reported to have uncooperative behavior, refusing to participate in disciplinary hearings, and refusing to sign violation forms. And last but not least, jail misconduct, for signing those autographs for other inmates with phrases like, "It's hammer time," while he was awaiting his sentencing. I've learned to trust my instincts more and more as I get older, and researching and watching everything I could, here is my conclusion on Tyler Hadley. I am of the opinion that he has a demon inside of him. It's not a mental disorder, it's pure evil. And that demon still resides in Tyler. It was just subdued by Tyler's murdering his parents. And no pills, therapy, or confinement will ever get rid of that demon. If you watch the court TV interview, pay close attention to Tyler and the way he shifts his eyes to something in the corner of that room, something he can only see. I want to say something. I had all this anger and confusion towards Michael Mandel, Tyler's best friend. I continued my research to see what he was doing as of today, hoping against hope that he was making a better life for himself. And I found out that he had passed away on July 29th, 2022, at the age of only 28 years old. I do feel bad about how I depicted him in this episode, and I want to apologize to his family and friends. Now I know he had trauma from what his best friend did that night. The conflict he must have felt that night. Do I run to the police or do I stand by my best friend? I would never wish the torment he must have lived with on anyone. No official cause of death has been released, but it was reported that he struggled with severe psychological trauma since the 2011 murders and his ongoing legal and substance abuse issues. I truly hope he's at rest now. Mary Jo Hadley's last post on her Facebook page was dated December 14th, 2009. It simply reads, "Baking Tyler's birthday cake. He'll be 16 on the 16th. Oh my." I'm not a parent. I can't imagine bringing a life into this world, raising them, helping them, and loving them just for them to end my life. But one thing I do know is nobody loves you like your parents. And one question that lingers in my mind is, would Blake and Mary Jo forgive their son? Blake and Mary Jo were just trying to save their son. But can you save someone from themselves? We live every day with the dark and light in this world, and with the people that surround us. We never think that someone we've loved and cared for can have dark thoughts about us. We never think that there's a rage deep down that may never be subdued. All we can do is try the best we can to help, love, and hope we are making a difference in their lives. Thank you for watching, and remember to look for signs, trust your instincts, and be safe. I'll see you next time.